There is a coronal mass ejection from the sun right now sweeping by the planet, and this is just the latest in a wave of energy from the sun that's causing increased geomagnetic volatility on the planet right now. We just got out of a G2 geomagnetic storm. We actually also had a couple G1 storms before that earlier in March, and we have a gigantic, gargantuan coronal hole on the sun right now, the largest in solar cycle 25 thus far, sweeping through Earth center direct. That will be geo-effective in about 2 days. It's a little bit of a 48 to 72 hours or so, maybe a little bit before 48 hours. This emits a high-speed stream of ions. They will sweep by the planet, increasing the velocity of the solar wind. They'll sweep by and cause even more geomagnetic volatility in, again, just about 48 to 72 hours. But we have a coronal mass ejection impact right now, originally forecasted to trigger a G3 geomagnetic storm from NOAA in the Space Weather Prediction Center. They had that pegged as a very high velocity impact at over 800 kilometers per second. One of the reasons why they gave it a G3 forecast. Well, it was delayed about 24 hours exactly, about 25 hours from their forecast. Thank you, Dak, for the super thanks. So it's not coming in at that very high velocity, but we already have a lot of other energetic factors at play that could continue to make that solar storm impact very, very strong. So we're going to look at all the data. We'll look at the real-time solar wind. We'll look at our ionosphere, which is supercharged right now. We also have this planetary alignment, as you saw in the thumbnail. Let's look at that really quickly, because this is wild. We have an absolutely beautiful planetary alignment right now. Very rare. This is not common. This is set for today. Here we're using an application called Solar System Scope. And this allows us to see planetary geometry very nicely. Of course, these are not to scale, but the geometry, the angles between the planets are. And so we see Earth right there, Venus, Mercury. Look at that perfect line. Why is this happening? Well, it's because right now, Mercury and Venus are doing inferior conjunction. So they are traveling retrograde from our perspective here on Earth. If we zoom forward, we see them there moving forward like this. But because of our place in our orbit, they appear to be going backwards through the night sky. And then eventually they'll resume forward motion. But this is what is happening right now. We are sweeping through this zone right there. And I made a forecast that we would have a pretty significant geomagnetic disturbance from March 23rd to 25th because of the planetary geometry. You will also notice here, Saturn and Neptune on the other side of the sun. This is a perfect opposition right there. They are going to go nearly conjunct later this year in July. They will have their actual conjunction in 2026. In fact, that'll be February of 2026. So less than a year away. Star Stories, thank you for the super thanks. We also, though, in addition to this, have Pluto and Uranus in a trine to each other. And they are also trine to the inner planet. So 120 degrees. And then Jupiter is in a 90-degree aspect to the inner planets and also to Neptune and Saturn. They're conjunct. So we have some very significant planetary geometry, which is contributing to all this energy volatility. That solar storm already swept by Mercury and Venus, right? Because it's hitting us now. We are in this alignment. They've already been hit by this solar storm. We are next. And if we look at the work of a variety of renowned physicists and thought leaders and even some mystics, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that plasma is conscious. There's a great book, I'm reading it right now, I'm nearly done, called The New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple. And I've been doing research into this well before I started reading this book, but he does a great job of bringing it all together, presenting some new information. And plasma, if it's conscious, because it has the requisite characteristics needed to be a host for consciousness, this is what I personally believe, but there's also just a lot of science supporting this. We could be receiving, under this idea, this model of the universe, we could be receiving new consciousness from the sun. And because that plasma swept over Mercury and Venus, we're also receiving certain information and energy and downloads, you could say, from these two planets. So very interesting. Just wanted to just touch on that because that's something for you to consider, to explore, to meditate on. There's a lot more that we don't know about our reality and our universe than we do know. One of the epidemics that exists right now is everyone thinking they know everything. Some famous quotes from physicists is like, we don't even know what a field is, right? We talk about electric fields, magnetic fields, but what even is a field? It's just our way of kind of wrapping our mind around the characteristics and behaviors of an electric field or magnetic field, but we don't even know what this stuff is. A gravitational field, right? All this is still so open and ready to be explored and understood to a much greater degree, to a more qualitative degree than it is right now. So don't be gaslit into thinking that, we know everything as a species. The world is a wide open place, a beautiful place. The universe is, ready for us to actually understand it. We are still just babies and toddlers, I would say. So let us go to our real-time solar wind. Well, let's actually start with our geospace. Yeah, we'll start with this. Our magnetic field. Here we have the density model showing Earth's magnetosphere, and you'll see this impact come in. Look at how the magnetotail narrows and how the magnetopods here at the front compresses. This is the equatorial plane. We're looking down on the Earth here. Here we have the north-south plane. So this is like a cross section, okay? This is North Pole, this is South Pole. So we see things are normal, right? Basically, solar wind conditions did die down right in advance of this coronal mass ejection. It sweeps in, it's compressing the magnetosphere. This causes magnetic reconnections. Energy from the magnetotail will stream down into our planet and cause aurora. So anyone that is watching this that wants to see aurora tonight, there's a likelihood, very good likelihood that you'll see some. I mean, people up in Alaska and far northern Canada, and I'm sure Siberian places, have been seeing them basically continuously every single night because they're close enough to the Arctic Circle and the poles. But I would say people further south into Canada and also even the northern United States could see aurora tonight if this geomagnetic storm develops more. Additional reason for that is that when you have the solar wind with certain characteristics, it won't really inject energy here at the front at the magnetopods, but it will still slide some energy in through the flanks of the magnetotail. The specific characteristics of this is when you have the BZ component of the magnetic field. Here we're talking about fields again. We don't even really know what they are, right? But we have the BZ component, the vertical component of this magnetic field, which you can split into a vertical, an X and a Y. You can split into 6 directions. You can split into a million directions. But to keep it simple, we split into 3 dimensions because we live in a 3-dimensional world just in general, right? If that vertical direction is positive, not negative, I mean, it's positive, it does not connect to Earth's magnetic field easily at the magnetopods, but it does inject some energy at the magnetotail. Now, when it's negative, like it is right now, or at least at the beginning of the storm it is, that is when you have a more powerful solar storm impact. But I'm mentioning that because the solar storm impact that we had before this one, back the G2 one just a few days ago, that was really strong in the magnetic field and it was mostly positive. That's why it was only a G2 storm. That could have been like a G4 storm. It was only a G2 storm because that vertical component was sharply positive, but that means energy came in at the magnetotail instead. That's based on the research. So we have this magnetotail narrowing down right now. That could mean that some of that energy stored in the flux tube is now going to start being reconnected and sent towards the radiation belts and deeper into the Earth energy system like the ionosphere and more. We can look at the ionosphere. Let's actually work our way down. The next step would be the ionosphere. Then we'll get to our magnetic field swings. Here we have the ionosphere model. This is for the past 24 hours. This is like a continuous 24-hour running model. And we see how charged the ionosphere is now. This is, to see such a big blob like this is really anomalous. See, normally it's like just these 2 streams like this on either side of the equator. But right now, because of a variety of factors I've been laying out in my recent videos, The ionosphere is supercharged. Look at that, just huge blob. Here we have our total electron content. We're looking at the total electron content of the ionosphere. The more electrons you have, the more ionized the ionosphere is. The more plasma it is. The ionosphere is the uppermost part of our atmosphere, the boundary between the normal atmosphere and space. It goes from about 50 kilometers above the surface during the daytime, 100 kilometers up at night, all the way up to like 1,000 kilometers until eventually it just becomes the radiation belts, right? There's really no actual boundary to these things. We just put these arbitrary labels on them, kind of arbitrary labels on them. You know, they just eventually bleed into the radiation belts. They just become the radiation belts. The density keeps getting lower and lower and lower, and it becomes more and more plasma. So the ionosphere is about 1% plasma. The other 99% is not ionized, but it can become additionally ionized due to a variety of factors. That's what we're seeing right now. I don't know the percentage right now, but it's more plasma than normal. And when you have more plasma, you have stronger electric currents, a stronger electric field. This can generate stronger magnetic field swings on the surface. That is how those are generated. So we are having this solar storm impact right now. And so as a result, we can look at what's happening to Earth's magnetic field. Here we have our geospace delta B map for the past 3 hours. This storm is just coming in at this moment in time. This could develop a lot. Like after I make this video, I'll be having dinner and I'll be going to sleep, right? I'm not going to see the aurora here in San Diego. But when I wake up, like we could still very much be in this geomagnetic storm. It could last a while. So this is not just like a 3-hour thing. This could go on for 12, 18, 24 hours. We see though that things were very quiet. The magnetic field was very, very quiet. And then you see it start to roll in right here. The magnetic flux is going to be higher in the polar regions where that energy is flowing in, but it will eventually start to increase there for the mid-latitude and equatorial regions. Here we see our change in the magnetic field measured in nanotesla. If you get these red colors, that's going up to like 400 plus nanotesla. That's a pretty big magnetic field swing. The normal diurnal variations. The magnetic field normally undergoes these swings day to day because of solar radiation. We rotate into the light of the sun, and that causes the ionosphere to get stronger, and it generates those electric currents that we just saw in the last map. That creates a diurnal change in the magnetic field, a 24-hour rhythm. It's like a pulse wave, actually, like a heartbeat. But those are normally like 40 nanotesla, 50 nanotesla in strength. Here, 400 nanotesla, 500 nanotesla. It can be 1500 nanotesla. It can be really, really big. So we're looking already at like a 10x increase in these magnetic field swings. Our body, our mind, was used to the normal diurnal rhythms. So instead of just a 40 nanotesla swing, now we're experiencing a 400 nanotesla swing. Now again, it depends on where you are. These high latitude regions, it's elevated, but you can still get some pretty big swings in these mid latitude zones as well. Thank you, Blonde, for the super thanks. And she's asking, can you include forecasts for Singapore and Malaysia? So yeah, those areas here are closer to the equatorial zones, right? I mean, Singapore is like right about there, and Malaysia is in that zone as well. So the magnetic field swings aren't going to be as big for any of these areas in those regions. But in general, this is a global event. So there is that to consider. But if we turn our focus to the United States, let's do this for a moment because this is important. I've been reading some research recently about the connection between solar storm impacts and tropospheric weather. Now, I've been reading this research and investigating into this for a long time already. But as it specifically relates to tornadoes, it's very, very interesting because we've been having tornadoes in the United States this March, and they've been quite severe. And here we have our supercell forecast for the end of March and then also for the end of March and beginning of April. And this is like quite significant. You don't get these sort of forecasts every single day. Now, how this will actually materialize, that remains to be seen. But as of right now, we have a really high chance of some really big storms in these areas. Also Washington State, look at Washington up there. There's also a chance of thunderstorms, and even tornadoes up in Washington? Well, there's some really interesting research that shows that tornado outbreaks are associated with notable solar wind disturbances. And there's like 4 main ways that they're associated. And this effect occurs during the winter months, depending on the southern hemisphere or northern hemisphere, right? Occurs during the winter months. It's not seen during the summer. For some reason, it's not seen during the summer, but during the winter, it is seen. Okay, what are these effects? Well, A, sometimes these tornado outbreaks closely follow after a co-rotating interaction region sweeps by the Earth. That's what we just had a few days ago. That's what sent that solar wind strength up to 40 nanometers. We'll look at that in just a second. Yeah, so that specifically, that instance, March 21st, as far as I know, there weren't any tornadoes then. But we did have a geomagnetic storm back on like the 14th, and then we started having these tornadoes that swept through here from the 14th to the 17th of March. But there's 3 other mechanisms, okay? They also occur when a high-density plasma hits the Earth in advance of a co-rotating interaction region or a heliospheric current sheet boundary crossing. A little complex, but basically you have the magnetic field of the solar wind. Sometimes it's positive or negative. When we cross through that polarity change, that's a heliospheric current sheet boundary crossing. That seems to have a connection with tropospheric weather, because what we see is that when you cross one of these heliospheric current sheet changes, right, the Earth goes into a new polarity for the solar wind. Is it pointing towards Earth? Is it pointing away from Earth? We notice a decrease in the vorticity area index, and that occurs about 1 to 3 days afterwards. Now we also see changes with, like, for example, tropospheric weather, and specifically here tornado outbreaks. They closely follow the impact of interplanetary coronal mass ejections, like what's happening right now. Right now. So this is active. If we look at the dates there, 23rd of March to the end of March, and then end of March to April 6th, I think it is, something like that, right? We have this coronal mass ejection impacting right now. And then, I think D is most important. They occur during the declining phase of major high-speed stream impacts. Well, again, here is our coronal hole on the sun, the biggest yet in solar cycle 25. It's following exactly after this coronal mass ejection impact that we're getting right now. So it's like a 1, 2, 3 punch, and we already have the requisite characteristics for some really strong storms in the United States, right? Low pressure systems. All of a sudden, if you do start to get some of that cyclone action, and all of a sudden, boom, you get these tornado outbreaks. So there's a lot more than just that. You have to research into, you have to be multidisciplinary scientist, basically, and research into tropospheric weather, the ionosphere, and also space weather to start to have an understanding of how these all interact together. But once you do that, an easy way to start is to research into the global electric circuit. There's an author, Rycroft. You can read him. He does such a good job laying it all out. So that's a good way to start. Just research global electric circuit, Google Scholar. But if you don't research into all these things, it's not going to make sense. And there's also a lot of pushback for some reason in terms of people recognizing the reality of the situation. So this is also active. If you live in these areas, just make sure you're prepared, right? I'm not saying this is the end of the world or anything, but just be prepared. Scouts motto, I live by that. I'm an Eagle Scout, so just that's important stuff. Let us look at our real-time solar wind, see what is happening. Because it has evolved while we've been doing this live stream. It could be, it's getting stronger. So let me pull it up. Here's our real-time solar wind. This is observed at the L1 Lagrange point by the Discover satellite. So this is 1% of the distance from the Earth to the sun. Gives us about a 1 hour heads up. Depends on the velocity though. Let me step over here. This is our coronal mass ejection impact. You can see the sharp change in the interplanetary magnetic field. Also, you can see that change in the plasma density right there. It about doubled, actually quadrupled. We were about 5, now we're at about 20 or so. And actually right now we're at 30. So we've sextupled, I guess is the word. We've gone up 6 times in terms of our plasma density. Velocity is still fairly low, okay? It's only about 400 kilometers per second, but it did reach a low of about 360 right before this came in. We see that. But look at our interplanetary magnetic field. It went up to about 15 really quick. Look at this nice southward component right there, that bucket as I call them. That shows that good connection to Earth's magnetic field. Now it is going northward, but it just dropped negative right there. So what we get with these coronal mass ejections is kind of these pockets where we get these southward components, and then the vertical direction will switch positive, and then it'll switch back to negative. But now the strength is about 14. It did go all the way, let's zoom in to the last 2 hours to really see that. It did go all the way up to like maybe 18 or 19 or so. Let's check it out. 17 right there. Yeah, so it was really getting up there. Now just in the past, 5 minutes, it's gone southward again. Keep in mind, this is being measured at L1, so this has not hit us yet. Like that right there, the past hour of this data has not hit us yet. It takes an hour in general for it to arrive on Earth. But this coronal mass ejection is clearly just getting started. This is not by any means over. I'm reporting on this basically right as it is starting to build up. So how this actually looks in 6, 8, 10 hours remains to be seen, but we did get it to come in. It did not miss us. It is hitting us right now. And we have some more data that we can look at. We have our LASCO coronagraph. Let's check this out. This is pretty cool. And I want to show you in particular one thing here. Let's get this sized appropriately. Yeah, I guess right there. And so we see that solar wind over the past 24 hours has actually been pretty calm and quiet. You're not going to get a signature for a high-speed stream to show up. So we talked about that coronal hole, the high-speed stream. They don't show up in the coronagraph. You won't see it. We do see some sort of blast off there. That's not going to hit Earth. I'm not sure if that was Earth side or far side. Thank you, Eric, for the super thanks. And there was another super thanks before that, so thank you to you as well. But what you'll notice here, if you're very keen and astute in observation, is that you will see the planet Mercury. Can you see it? Do you see Mercury? Mercury is on the scope right now. That is Mercury right there, about to perform its inferior conjunction in between the Earth and the Sun. And so we just had Venus do her inferior conjunction, Venus Cazimi. What, today is the 23rd right now? Yeah, that happened yesterday. She did it slightly above the equatorial plane, out of view, just slightly out of view of our chronograph. Mercury, though, is a little further south, and he is performing his interior or inferior conjunction right now, basically. So over the next 12 hours, he will go Cazimi and then start to do the second half of his retrograde, just as Venus is doing that right now. So there's a whole bunch of stuff associated with that. Just in general, we talked about that alignment between the planets. That's interesting. But there's also these archetypal significations when you have planets going retrograde and how that affects us here on Earth from a more metaphysical dimension, you could say. We won't explore that in this video. Just wanted to touch that because there's definitely something there. As someone that's researched into that a lot and came in as a skeptic, it definitely proved itself with time. You just have to have a little bit of an open mind to understand this stuff. So we have this inferior conjunction with Mercury right now, and actually that takes me just to a little bit of a teaser perhaps for what is ahead of us, because this is really interesting. This is really, really interesting. Here we have again our solar system, and this is set for the 21st of March. That's just because that's where it left off, but right now it's the 23rd of March. This is where we are right now. Venus just did her Cazimi. There is what's known as a Venus cycle. Every planet has a synodic cycle with the sun as viewed from Earth, right? Mercury has the fastest one. It does 3.14 retrogrades per year because it has the highest orbital velocity, right? You see that? It's moving around. So its cycle gets reset all the time. Venus, it has about an 18-month cycle or so. And so if we go to the next Venus Cazimi, check this out. We discussed the very potent planetary geometry that's active right now that, according to some people, based on the research, is what can create these sort of solar disturbances that launch from the sun towards us. But if we go forward in time, let's go forward to the next Venus Cazimi, okay? So we're going to go through here. Now we see it's August. And now it is November, and we're getting into January. Oh, Oh, look at this. It is January 6th, January 5th, January 6th, just like this. Venus now is on the other side of the sun performing her superior conjunction, right? This is now the next phase in that synodic cycle. Check out the planetary geometry, folks. We have Jupiter, Earth, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars all in a perfect line. This is a planetary geometry that I identified a while back, but the connection with this one that's happening right now is insane. The fact that the Venus cycle takes us from one very significant planetary geometry straight to the next most significant planetary geometry that's occurring in the next 12 months. And in fact, we don't get a nice planetary geometry like this for years. You can download this app if you want. You can scroll through. That is one of the nicest planetary geometries that we get for a long time, going all the way out to like 2040, 2050. So this is really, really wild that the Venus cycle is bringing this up for us. And so if we do lean on archetypal astrology a little bit, the themes that are coming up now are going to express themselves again around this time, early next year. And that is also when, in February, we have, if we zoom over here, we have Saturn and Neptune going conjunct. So that is early, I think it's early February, but we see them right there from the perspective of the Earth, and then we'll get that conjunction like this right about here. That's like mid-February. See that? See how they're now in a line? So all this stuff is building, right? I've been talking about March Madness. Well, really I should be saying the madness of 2025 and 2026. These energies are reaching this climax moment, and then they're going to cool off, and we're not going to see really anything super major in terms of this sort of action till 2028, 2032, and then all the way out to like 2040, okay? So just, make sure you keep a cool head, do what you need to stay healthy and well and grounded, and just focus on what you need to focus on. Don't worry about other people. Don't get bogged down and lost in that stuff. That would be my recommendation. Just as one simple human to another, that would be my recommendation. So that's very interesting. I wanted to point that out in the live stream. I think it's fascinating, this app. There we go. And let's talk about this coronal hole one more time. If I can pull it up here. I should have it, yeah, here we go. Because this is what we have coming next. Okay, so we had this coronal mass ejection impact right now. It's going through its beginning phase. It is fairly strong, about 17 nanotesla in strength, 15 to 20 nanotesla in that range. It's oscillating between north and south polarity. We're already seeing these magnetic field fluctuations across the globe. That's going to continue for the next 12 hours or so. I mean, it could wrap up fairly early, but I don't think that's the case. I think we're going to see this, play out at least for the next few hours. Then we have this guy coming in. I've been calling this Big Daddy. Some of us have been calling this Big Daddy. Big Daddy is going to sweep by and hit us basically right after that coronal mass ejection. And this is the largest coronal hole that we've seen in solar cycle 25. Thank you, Cosmic Zeal, for the super thanks. That's awesome. Thank you so much. So this is really wild. And the one thing to point out too is that most of this coronal hole is here in the southern hemisphere. So a lot of that high-speed stream will be going south of the ecliptic plane, south of the Earth. It will miss us. But we do see it stretch here past the equator, and look at that, it actually connects up there. So it is crossing, it's trans-equatorial, it is crossing the equator. It's quite large. That will be hitting us. The big question, and I don't have the answer to this, but the big question is how strong is that coronal hole going to be? Like the high-speed stream from it. How significant is it? Because we have examples in the past where we've had really big geomagnetic storms from coronal hole high-speed streams. We've also at times had basically nothing burgers, you could say. So I don't think this is going to be a nothing burger, but the question is how significant is it going to be? That is definitely an open question. Now NOAA does have a forecast for this. So we can look at a forecast. I mean, I don't want to go just by memory. I want to be accurate with this. So let's read specifically what they wrote for this coronal hole. And we just go here. The forecast. Periods of G1 storming are likely on the 24th due to the possible late arrival of a coronal mass ejection from the 21st. That has arrived. It arrived right after they wrote this at 30, basically 0:30 a.m. Universal Time. Thank you, Claudia, for the super thanks. That's awesome. And they downgraded it from G3 to G1 because of the velocity. Because it was a late arrival, they downgraded it. Thank you, MNN, for the super thanks. Then in addition to waning negative polarity coronal high-speed stream influences, periods of G1, G2 storming is likely on the 25th due to co-rotating interaction region effects, followed by the onset of a positive polarity coronal high-speed stream. So they think there's going to be a pile-up of plasma. That's what a co-rotating interaction region is. It's a pile-up of plasma that's slow and dense with high velocity wind behind it that keeps feeding that wall of plasma, right? Because it catches up to it and keeps bumping up the plasma density more and more and more. So they have this set for a G1 storm from this coronal mass ejection impact, which is coming in right now. And then they have a forecast for G1 to G2 storming from this coronal hole and also a co-rotating interaction region combination. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out because, again, this is the biggest coronal hole that we've seen in solar cycle 25, one of the biggest in the past decade. I mean, this is a monster coronal hole. And the big ones typically will show up in the polar regions during solar minimum. In terms of total surface area extent, the really big ones will typically be in the polar regions during solar minimum. Interesting idea there is that perhaps that magnetic field is open during solar minimum because they're connecting more strongly to Birkeland currents. But putting that aside, some of you will find that interesting. Putting that aside, the fact that we have such a large coronal hole that's not really super deep into these high latitude regions is interesting, right? It's more trans-equatorial because we have it here, we have it there, we do have it there as well. So this is a quite anomalous feature and it's basically dominating the sun right now. Let's check out our sunspots. I wanted to point this out. Look at our sunspots. Here we have our sun right now, and you'll see that there's basically nothing on this part of the sun. I mean, you get a little bit of stuff there, you get some bright regions, right? But the most significant sunspots are rotating out. This guy did undergo a little bit of differentiation. It got a little bigger, but not by much. There is a chance that if this flares, or this guy, but more so that guy, higher likelihood that if that flares from the western limb, we could get some sort of, relativistic pulse of protons and electrons and ions in general here on Earth, triggering a radiation storm. But right now, this coronal hole is so large, it's basically dominating the entire Earth-facing side of the sun. Now, what's interesting is that often we see coronal holes, and then afterwards we get a lot of sunspot activity following behind them. They seem to be these kind of delineators, right? It's a magnetic field dynamic. And so sunspots are also distortions to the magnetic field where it's pushing out and you get these flux lobes that push out and reconnect and fling a whole bunch of energy out. The coronal holes act a little bit differently, but the fact that we have such a large one here, it's going to be really interesting to see what rotates into view starting end of March and into April. It could be really dynamic. That's a possibility. I think that might be it for the forecast today. We can look at our HB60 index really quick. Actually, before that, let's look at our sunspots. Just want to show you, because of that coronal hole, our sunspots have plummeted down to 80. So, because, we've been oscillating from 150 to 200, more 100 to 200. We've been in this zone. Our average has been sticking at about 150 for a while now. But because of that coronal hole, right down to 80. But again, tons of activity right now because of other factors. It's not just sunspots. I think most of you watching this who watch me regularly, you know that. So here we have our our HB30 index, and this allows us to see the geomagnetic activity right now. Thank you, Peace and Love, for the super thanks. Yeah, peace and love, people. That's what counts. That's what matters. So we see that our activity has started to pick up, and this is on the wrong display capture. Here we go. This activity has started to pick up. We reached this really low right here where the values were only 1. Now we're up here, and this is actually a G1 storm. 5.33. This is 1 hour right there. The KP index is a 3-hour measure, but this is a 30-minute measure. We see that we're starting to reach these G1 levels, which is what NOAA forecasted. The revised forecast is for. Originally, they thought G3, but if this solar storm really starts to strengthen more, let's zoom in one more time. If this really starts to pick up, this could get to G2, G3 because of the state of the ionosphere being so charged up from the last geomagnetic storm, from the Russell-McFerrin effect, from the equinoctial effect. There's a whole bunch of things right now that are contributing to greater ionospheric volatility and overall energy potential. So like electric field potential. So if this continues to get stronger, right now it's pretty good, 3 times stronger than normal, 16. But we need this to really have these southward component buckets, and we need that field to either maintain strength or get stronger for this to be a more significant impact. And what we often see with coronal mass ejections is that they kind of take some time to build up, right? It's not like you have the nightclub, and when you get there at 8 p.m., you're the first one like that's pumping already, right? You're the first one. This is like the first few people in the nightclub. DJ is going to set up in an hour, and then all of a sudden things are going to be going, okay? It's like Jamaica at 2 a.m., right? They don't even get to the club until 11. Those are the early comers to the club. So that is a possibility. I think that's a more likely possibility. I think that while people in North America are sleeping tonight, we're going to be receiving a lot of geomagnetic volatility. And people in Europe and Asia will be experiencing this during the day. So yeah, we can now go to our, I think let's go to our aurora forecast, and then we'll wrap up and we'll do our cosmic connection meditation. And we'll equalize and balance and harmonize some of these energies. And it just reset. Let me just push this forward a little bit so we can see the most recent time. So here we have the aurora sweeping across Western Europe, and then Iceland, Greenland, and now into North America. See that expansion? That's because of what's happening right now. And that's the reset. So this is like not 24 hours ago, but this is the old. And again, if I could just go through this even a little faster, just recycled to. Here it is. This is what we've been having with aurora. And then look at that expansion right there. That could continue to grow over the next 6-12 hours. If you look at the southern hemisphere, it's not going to be as exciting because it's not going to hit that many people. But I know people in the southern hemisphere love it when I talk about them, so we will give it a look. It's also going to see this expansion here at the end. Look at that. People in Antarctica are getting a show. And if this continues, people in New Zealand the South Coast, could see some stuff. Maybe Tasmania too. Hello to everyone, Tasmania. So that could happen as well. But not many people see the aurora in the south. They typically don't anyways. This could really expand into South America as well, but it'd have to get quite a bit stronger. But if you're in these areas, look to the south. And if you're in the northern hemisphere in one of these areas that could get aurora, like if you're in these states right there, I would say wait a little bit and then look to the north. That will be how you get a chance to see this. You can use your phone, like a 3-second exposure to pull out some of these colors. Yeah, that'd be interesting thing to do. I'm down here, so I'm not going to see it. But if I was up there in North Dakota, I would wait till like probably 2 a.m. go out and see what I could see. Especially with low light pollution, the moon right now isn't rising until early in the morning, probably like 4 a.m. or so, 4 a.m. because we're getting close to a new moon. That's also the partial solar eclipse that we have coming up on the 29th. So this is just one part of a larger wave of energy rolling in. That partial solar eclipse on the 29th is one of these also an energy kind of climax moment. So we're building up to that. We're still working our way up to that. This is not the end of it, right? We have the coronal hole high-speed stream coming up. We have the partial solar eclipse. We have some planets changing signs, whether you look at it from Western or from sidereal. So a lot of interesting stuff happening right now. But again, I just want to stress, if you're in any of these areas, please just be extra careful, because we already have these really big supercells that are forecasted from now till the end of April. And because of the geomagnetic conditions, specifically from this coronal mass ejection impact right now and from the high-speed stream that's going to come in from this coronal hole, this could get amplified beyond what meteorologists expect, because 99% of meteorologists, if we're just being honest, I'm not saying I'm some sort of expert or something. I'm just a young buck who likes to research into this stuff, and I like making videos, okay? That's all I am. I'm not pumping myself up, okay? But if we're being honest, 99% of meteorologists aren't multidisciplinary in this way, and they don't research into space weather and how it affects tropospheric weather. Most of them are in denial of that. So just, you know, I'm able to use my platform as a way to do a little bit of education on this. I have these research papers linked on my Twitter X account, so you can go check them out and read them yourself. I recommend you do that. There's 4 of them. There's a bunch more than that, but there's 4 good papers from earlier, like decades ago, and then up to 2024 that you can read that talk about this connection. I highly recommend you do it. So yeah, you know, we're all just here to learn, to continue. Sometimes we make mistakes, but to learn and grow, and to just hopefully make the world a better place. That's the best that we can ask for. So let's do our cosmic connection meditation and just equalize and balance some of these energies. Now I need to go here. Now before I do that, I would like to remind people, now that we are done with the broadcast, I would like to remind people that I do have a sale going on right now at wildfreeorganic.com. And this ends at March, and I don't have sales all the time. So it's a good opportunity to pick up some stuff for 5% off. The code is March Madness. And specifically, you know, I talk a lot about spirituality, which all these tea blends and stuff that I sell, it's all my own efforts. This isn't me just like buying stuff from China and selling it to you. This is like really thoughtfully designed or manufactured, the best of the best, sold at a fair price. But I often talk about spirituality. The reason why is because it's the bee's knees. This stuff is awesome. It's great for meditation and yoga nidra and sleep and rest, relaxation. Finally get some sleep. If you've been having problems sleeping, this stuff will help you. It can also enhance your dreams. Really, really great for a lot of things. But I also have a bunch of other tea blends too. All of them thoughtfully, intelligently designed as well from multiple perspectives. So for example, we have Tranquility, which is excellent for gut health. That's one of the first things that get disrupted often by things like solar activity and geomagnetic activity. This is chamomile, it's dandelion roots, calendula, it's lemongrass, it's peppermint. This stuff is also really good for helping you rest and relax. But it doesn't have the lotus flower, which is a bit more of in the mugwort, which are a bit more of like dream activators. So if you're worried about dreams, you can drink this. Rest assured, you probably won't have your dreams go nutso on you, okay? But this stuff is so good for gut health. You can drink it in the morning, you can drink it at night, anytime during the day. Tranquility is awesome. We have Electricity, if you want something to pick you up in the morning, but also really good for gut health. Optimizes the microbiome, gut-brain consciousness axis. You have Electricity. You have yerba mate and ginkgo biloba. And then you also have lemongrass, and I think there's calendula here as well. No, you have lemongrass, orange peel, and peppermint. So it has a really kind of good zesty flavor to it, but it gives you just enough energy because that yerba mate, the caffeine, the theobromine, but then that ginkgo is so good for the brain. But then you also have the peppermint and the lemongrass and the orange peel for the microbiome and for the gut. So this stuff is great. I love that stuff. Vitality, if you want something that's a bit more of like a mood booster, good. It's like an aphrodisiac. If you're trying to make babies, here you go. But the more general purpose for Vitality is it's good for your hormones and balancing your hormones. It has ashwagandha, has damiana, has hibiscus, rose petals, and also ulutheru. So it makes like a nice, rich, red cup of tea, but it's really good for hormone balance. Men, women, postmenopausal women. It's good for testosterone, for dudes, and just in general, it's good for your libido. Now, if you want something that's like sweet and like just a tea that's pleasurable to drink, but also good for your immunity, a fruit tea. This is elderberry and strawberry as the two berries. Elderberry being really good for your immune system, strawberry being tasty, having a lot of anthocyanins. But then you also get hibiscus and rose hips. Rose hips having a lot of vitamin C. And then you have a little bit of lemon balm, which is good for helping you stay calm, cool, and collected. A really good anti-anxiolytic, so it cuts down anxiety if that's an issue. And this in general is just really tasty, really good for your immunity, and also just helps you rest and relax. Last but not least, we have herb coffee. This is a fantastic coffee substitute. It's 50% coffee, single origin, Peruvian, shade grown, organic. It's all organic. All this stuff's all organic. But then you also have 50% comprised of chicory root, dandelion root, and also lion's mane mushroom. So also another good one for sparking up those brain cells, promoting a little bit of neuroplasticity. Drink this in the morning. You're not going to miss out in terms of like your normal cup of coffee, because again, it's still 50% coffee, but you won't get the crash or the jitters. It's much more energy harmonizing. And it's better for your microbiome because of the chicory root and the dandelion root. So these are all the products that I have on my store, right? I talk about this one all the time, but these ones are all awesome too. You should really try them out. And they're 5% off right now using the code March Madness. Also, the earthing boots, which are newly released, they're also on sale. These ship internationally, whereas this is only United States only. Just keep that in mind. Okay, enough of that. I know I sell great stuff and the reviews are awesome. You guys love it. So many of you are probably drinking the spirituality right now. You're all we're all in resonance in coherence. But let us do a quick cosmic connection meditation, just to bring in these energies, just to start to equalize and ground and bring in a little bit of peace and calm, because these sort of events can cause an upwelling of energy, an increase in metabolism, and they present a lot of opportunities for us. So, creative opportunities. They can give us energy to do things. So let's utilize the positive expression of these energies, but that won't occur if you're kind of frantic and all over the place. Or as Bilbo Baggins said, he feels like too little butter spread out across too much bread. So we don't want that. So start having some nice deep breathing from the belly. We want that belly breath, right? Belly breath. Use your diaphragm. You don't breathe with your lungs, you breathe with your muscles. This is for the root chakra. So we're starting at the root and we'll work up to the crown. And so build an energy cord going down to the center of the earth. That is where the magnetic field originates, in the core. That's what's protecting our planet right now from the solar radiation. So in your mind, in your third eye, you can visualize a cord of energy going down through your body, from your crown, down through your groin, down to the ground surface. Imagine it piercing through rock and then mantle, eventually reaching the core of the planet. Once that cord is there, build that connection, strengthen it, and start to energize it. And breathe into it. Posture, alignment, balance, and harmony. And trust that that cord is there, stable, it's maintained. You have the connection now. Now we're going to work our energy up. We're going to now receive from the sun these solar energies coming in, we are going to pull them in and work with them via the crown chakra. To do that, we will use the crown chakra singing bowl. Nope, sorry. And we will get started. Built. Now extend a cord up above your head, through the roof, or out into the sky to the ionosphere, the radiation belts. Feel the charge of the earth, her plasma, her consciousness, and then go beyond. Extend it into the interplanetary medium and out to the sun. And now you have a direct connection. You are the conduit between the earth and the sun. Our two main benefics which keep us alive. Thank you. We see and honor and recognize you for all that you do. We humbly ask for your support and for soul alignment and growth along our spiritual path. Bring in those opportunities, bring in the abundance. Give us that clarity of mind. While the world may be in chaos now, help us to see the light, to follow it unfailingly, unquestionably. We ask for brilliant insights, paradigm shifts, a new renaissance for man. From the ground up, each and every one of us working together to bring in new earth. With that vision in your third eye, just hold on to that. Savor it. If you can imagine it, it is real. Just hold on to it for a little longer. A little longer. 1888 viewers right now. 1888 viewers. The number of infinity and abundance. Amazing. Take a deep breath. Thank you all so much for being here today, for joining on the live stream. Hope you all appreciated, what we did together. This is not just me, it's all of us coming together, working together in spirit and in harmony and creating and fostering a community. And so each and every one of our actions is important. and contributes to this greater whole that we are building. So thank you all so much. Again, if you'd like to, if you'd like to mutually support each other, I have not only this channel, but also the website wildfreeorganic.com/store. I make products and you can utilize them for your spiritual evolution journey. So that's a way for us to mutually support each other, even above and beyond what we've done here. Wishing you all well. We have a lot more of these energies to come as I laid out in this live stream. So please be mindful of that. Please be mindful of your health. Do what you need to stay healthy, rested, grounded. Drink a lot of water. Make sure you go outside, do some grounding, breathe fresh air, and just take some time to pause at times. Build a little bit of a distance in between yourself and things that want you to react, because right now things are very reactionary, right? It's like a big chemistry experiment right now. Everything wants you to react to it. A lot of people are, but if you come at it from a place of consciousness and see what some of these reactions are, you can stay like a noble gas and to stay totally calm, cool, and collected and totally unperturbed. So that's my advice. That's what I'm doing right now, at least to the best of my ability. That would be my recommendation based on the different archetypal elements currently at play and the big enhancement of energy we have right now because of planetary geometry, because of solar activity, because of geomagnetic volatility. So yes, again, wishing you all well, sending you lots of love and light. Please take care of yourselves, and yeah, see you very soon.